want to be forever young? Do you really want to live forever?
One life,
forever,
one love,
and ever.
one soul.
Today's December 15th, 2019. I'm Brent Nally, and I'm really excited to have an individual on my channel today that has taught me so much, particularly about cryptocurrency. But this focus of this conversation is going to be a little bit more geared to longevity, which the person who I'm about to introduce is very knowledgeable about and very passionate about, because what has driven this individual into cryptocurrency mainly has just been the number one thing is making people's lives better. And technology is the best way that we can do that. The book 0 to 1 by right back there by Peter Thiel is a great example of that, as are many others. But this individual is Roger Ver, not Ver, as many people pronounce it sometimes. And we'll talk about that and why that's significant, in my opinion, in a way. Roger, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you for the good introduction there as well.
Definitely. So this is kind of funny to me because Roger and I have been chatting recently trying to do this interview, and then I saw him on live with Richard Hart a few minutes ago that you just did that interview. I don't know, maybe you finished up an hour ago or so and went and had some breakfast, right?
Exactly, yeah. So it's now 10:15 in the morning here. So.
And where in the world is Roger Ver now? I actually don't know. I didn't hear you guys mention that.
Yes, I'm in Vietnam at the moment, and we're having a big Bitcoin Cash meetup this evening. So I'll be here doing that later on today. So, but this talk isn't supposed to be necessarily about cryptocurrency. It's supposed to be life extension and improving people's lives through longevity techniques and science and research. But the reason I got involved in cryptocurrencies is because I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not going to be doing the scientific research myself directly to figure out how to make people be able to live longer, healthier lives. But more economic growth leads to more money being available to do that sort of research, and cryptocurrencies are the best tool that I'm aware of to bring more economic growth to the entire world. And so that seemed like a great way that I could contribute to this sort of thing. But I've been interested in this space for a long, long time. I'm sure people that are interested in this space will be aware of what cryonic suspension is in a company called Alcor down in Arizona. I have actually signed up for that, and I've been a member since I think probably 1999, like a long, long, long time now. I'm the one who convinced them to start accepting Bitcoin back in probably 2013. And so now you can pay in Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash at Alcor for your yearly membership dues. And I've been a big fan. And actually through that, I was going to they had like a Silicon Valley, chronic suspension meetup groups in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I would go to those meetups and met all sorts of interesting people. And one of the people that I met there, who was also an Alcor member and signed up for that, was a man named Ralph Merkle. And people might recognize that last name there if you're in cryptocurrency because you've heard of Merkle trees. Yeah, and so that's the guy that invented Merkle trees. But he's also a guy that's super interested in life extension technology and chronic suspension and all this sort of fun, interesting stuff. And myself, just as being a probably 18 or 19-year-old kid when I met him for the first time, but he was, so nice and spent lots of time talking with me. And there were just so many super interesting, smart people that I got to meet through the chronic suspension life extension group in Silicon Valley. And so if anybody's in the area, I think that group's probably still going on. I really recommend going there because you'll meet lots of really interesting, smart people.
Very fascinating. Thanks for sharing that, Roger. Before we jump too deep into longevity, where are you in Vietnam? Do you mind sharing? What city?
Yeah, Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon.
Okay, cool. I went to Vietnam for a couple of weeks with my wife. My brother met up with us about a year ago, a little over a year ago. Absolutely loved it. Went many different countries in Southeast Asia, 25 countries in all last year in our year of travel. But we didn't go down to Ho Chi Minh. We stayed up more in the central and northern part. And Ha Long Bay, I'll just say, if you haven't been there yet, have you been there?
I've only seen the photos on the internet, and it looks pretty amazing.
So when I saw the movie King Kong Skull Island in 2016, I don't watch many movies, but that was pretty breathtaking CGI. I was like, no way, like a place like that really exists. Hollywood's pretty good. Well, they filmed in Ha Long Bay, I found out, and it's incredible. So I highly recommend if you have time. Obviously, you're busy, but it's magical. That's for a different conversation, though. So again, thank you so much for being here. We're going to be focusing mainly on longevity, which is also known as anti-aging. Basically, the way that I like to describe it is I'm trying to make your health span and your lifespan much, much longer. And, the best way to make your lifespan longer is to actually increase your health span. So people get really confused on this in surveys and all sorts of ways of communication where they think that, you ask a question, what are you going to feel like when you're 85 years old? Or how long do you want to live? Those types of questions people tend to answer in the world right now and their belief system right now. But I want to live as long as my health span will allow me to and my lifespan will. And we're pushing the science there. And I'm kind of interviewing some people on my YouTube channel who are experts in this, scientists who are actually doing the work. As you mentioned earlier, Roger, you're not going to do the work, probably. I'm not going to do the work. But we could potentially be investors in this and partner. And, Vitalik Buterin, who I know you like, has donated to SENS and some other people. So I also want to talk about with you, Roger, maybe we can do this right now. I'm big into stem cells. I've had stem cells injected in myself. And I know that you had your knee had some mesenchymal stem cells that were derived in the same manner that mine were by Dr. Neil Reardon at his clinic at the Stem Cell Institute in Panama. And I'd just love for you to share any details you feel pertinent about that right now.
Yeah, so I've only done it once, but it was definitely an interesting experience. We flew from St. Kitts to Panama, and it was a group of us there, and we had it done. So it sounds a lot worse than it actually is. So I tore my ACL in my knee, so that was my main motivation for this case. But without any anesthesia at all, they shove a needle right in the side of your knee, and the needle goes right into the center of your knee, and they squirt some of the stem cells right in there. And so the big question I have at this point too is like, my knee feels significantly better, but does it feel significantly better because almost 2 years have gone by, or does it feel better because the stem cells were actually effective? And I don't know. But in addition to that, though, I did just intravenous stem cell infusion. I think it was like 100 million cells. I forget the exact number supposedly. And
I believe that's correct. That's their protocol. So that sounds correct to me. I had 200 million, but I went to a different clinic. So that sounds correct.
Okay. And it just wiped me out. I just was exhausted and, went back to bed that evening. Other people felt fine and didn't get tired at all. And maybe it had an effect. I don't know. It certainly wasn't cheap. But that's why you have to do these big giant studies and figure out, is this, placebo effect? Is this real? Like what's helping? And the science seems to indicate that, yeah, this can really have real positive benefits, but, sadly, or just, that's life. Like, I've been so busy with the cryptocurrency stuff the last, it'll be 9 years this January full time in that space. So I haven't been able to do as much reading or keeping up about that, life extension and stem cell technology and that's as much stuff as I would like to. Although I've invested in several companies. In fact, in 2020, right, which hard to believe it's almost here. So in another couple of months here, we're opening a big giant stem cell treatment facility that I'm an investor in Antigua in the Caribbean. So people from the US will be able to fly there very easily and get stem cell treatments there as well. And I've taken actually a substantial amount of the money that I earned from cryptocurrency space and have been investing it in stem cell and other life extension type technology stuff.
That's really exciting, Roger. And I've heard you say something along those lines in another video, which really got me excited to kind of, I don't normally like to bother people. I went up to you and said hi at Acapulco in February of 2018, real briefly. And people were honestly asking a bunch of stupid questions in the hallway when you're just out there. So YouTube people, clearly they don't follow you because they were asking what I thought were pretty dumb questions. And I just walked up to you and just said, hey, Roger, appreciate you doing what you're doing. You're doing the best to make the world a better place based off the information that you've learned and being honest and transparent and showing signs of leadership, in my opinion. And my brother was kind of holding it sideways, the camera, and you just basically said, thanks, Brent, I appreciate it. And then we shook hands and then off to like more stupid questions as I stood there. Just to be honest, like, you don't have to say they're stupid. Those are my words. But my general point, I guess what I'm getting at is that things take time to learn, and you've been putting all your time in cryptocurrency for the last 9 years and like all your energy. It's incredible, like to follow and see what you've done, what you've built, and how many people have misunderstood some of those things. But when you said stem cells in a previous interview, like that you're interested in and investing in, I'd love to know a little bit more about what type of stem cells they are and what kind of attracted you to that particular company or investment strategy or whatever you can share in that manner.
Yeah. So the thing that kind of kicked it off was my trip to Panama and Dr. Neil Riordan's clinic. And that became, that made it interesting. Like, oh, hey, here's a way where you can help people and make money and drive the technology forward to improve people's lives all at the same time. So it's a win-win-win situation. So, it wasn't a small amount of money that I've invested in this now at this point. But I think a better person to tell you all about the technology will be some of the doctors that are working at the clinic. So I'd be more than happy to make an introduction for you at that point. So you can talk to them and they can tell you exactly what they're up to. And not only is it a treatment facility, but there's an R&D lab there as well, where they're going to be doing actual research on there and hopefully make some new breakthroughs. And the right place to be doing that sort of thing is outside of the US, sadly. So Antigua is ready for that. So.
Yeah, all those things are definitely true. And thanks for sharing those details. Dr. Neil Riordan, I first heard of him when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, probably about more than a year and a half ago now. I think it was like May of 2018. And I think a lot of people probably heard of that. And the reason I personally don't believe, real mesenchymal stem cells and other types of stem cells, which we'll talk about, in this interview, we'll get to that, Roger, but they're definitely real, if you get them properly, if you take them from what I had and what I believe you had at Dr. Riordan's clinic is umbilical cord derived mesenchymal stem cells from a healthy birth. So what that means by healthy is that there's been no viruses. They test them for certain things. They're clean. It was a real human birth. It's not controversial because most of the umbilical cord and any other extra goo, which I just saw up close come out of my wife 3 weeks ago on November 20th, 2019. I'll bring my son in a minute. He's 3 weeks. It's all real stem cell stuff. It's what makes babies young and healthful and useful. In any event, I can go down a rabbit hole with this stuff, but the point is that's where you got the stuff that went in you and I got the stuff that went in me. And it's not controversial because this stuff just gets thrown away. It's not used. It's not like
no babies were killed to make this.
Correct. So I hate to rant on that, but I want people to understand up front. People get really confused. So that needs to be communicated. But there's also two other types of major stem cells that I've reported on and have and will be interviewing more people about. One is embryonic, which is a embryo. It's a 5-day-old blastocyst. It shouldn't be controversial at all. It's not yet a fetus. Like scientifically, it's just not. Some people will freak out, but it's just in a test tube. It's 5 days of the cells being replicated from the day that they were put together in a lab. It's never been in a person. Again, it's not abortion. Should not be controversial. But there's a clinic in Kiev, Ukraine called EmCell, EmCell. And there's even more confusion. You know how in cryptocurrency world and life in general, confusion tends to go even further. EmCell stands for embryonic. It does, but it's the Ukrainian language. And the word embryonic and fetal are the same in Ukraine because they don't have a word for fetal. So they use them interchangeably. So really this is fetal stem cells. What they're doing is other clinics are doing abortions. There's about 50 million abortions every single year in the world globally is what's estimated. And what they're doing is they're just purchasing those abortions that are already finished and they're using them and they're having phenomenal results from the people that have actually reached out to. But it's super controversial. So I just kind of went on a rant there. I'm kind of like maybe potentially educating you about this, Roger, but also just kind of putting out there what I've learned and seeing your general thoughts. So rant over. What do you think about that stuff?
Yeah, abortion. I kind of touched on that one there too. So I guess Murray Rothbard's one of my big intellectual heroes. In one of his books, he pointed out that even people that say that abortion is murder, they don't actually believe it. Because if you ask them, okay, you think abortion's murder, what is the appropriate punishment for murder? Is it 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in prison? So should women that have an abortion, should they have 10, 20, 30 years in prison? And almost nobody says that they should. And I'm sure this wasn't meant to be an abortion discussion, but
No, Roger, I apologize. Certainly, I didn't mean to turn it into that or back you into the corner there. I was just kind of mentioning this is kind of the state of the stem cell world right now from what I've researched. In the US, it's funny how the laws and regulations, this is one thing that you talk about a lot, regulators and compliance and that language. I'll let you talk about that. But the incentives come from, or the behaviors come from the incentives, right? And so in the US right now, you're literally not allowed to do what you did in Panama, what I did in Mexico. It's not allowed, right? So the details are very nuanced. People will argue with me on this, but I know what I'm talking about. You can get frozen umbilical cord derived stem cells in the US, but the ones that I got weren't frozen. And the ones that you got, I believe they were frozen, but they were highly replicated. So they're specialized, and that type of replication is not allowed in the US. So we're getting into, I don't want to get too crazy into this, but I promise I know what I'm talking about on those details. So the point is that because you're not allowed to innovate in the US, innovation's happening in other places, just similar to in what's happening in cryptocurrency with Malta right now. And I just wanted to see in general your thoughts on the stem cells, but I didn't want to talk about this whole conversation just about stem cells.
I've been so focused on cryptocurrencies that a decade ago, I'd be pretty knowledgeable about most of the latest updates and life extension stuff. But now I've been kind of out of the loop. So I'd love to ask you, because I'm sure there's lots of people that are like me that are super interested in this, but they've been busy with other aspects of their lives. What are the most interesting, actionable things that people can do today to help move this forward? Are there treatments? Are there, there's the SENS Foundation people can donate money to. They can, start businesses in the field. What are actual actionable things that people can do today to help move this in the right direction? Because it sounds like you've been very focused on this, and cryptocurrency's just been another piece of your interest, but maybe the life extension's been a bigger piece. And I'd love to hear what should I be doing today as someone who's been busy with cryptocurrency?
That's a really great question, Roger. And honestly, I still keep up with cryptocurrency quite a bit, and I manage some money for myself and some, for family. However, I follow smart people like you. It's what I try to do with cryptocurrency right now. And honestly, it's because it's kind of a bear market and things are a little stagnant, to be completely transparent. But I also said now's the time to focus more on anti-aging and start actually interviewing experts this year is what I've done. But last year, I want to say one thing real quick before I answer that question, Roger. I strongly believe that what you had injected in your knee was real stem cells, really helped you. Obviously, now that it's done and it seems like you're better, I'll let you answer that in a moment because I'm not even positive you're better. You kind of said you were, but I strongly believe what I had injected in me was real stem cells, from an umbilical cord of a healthy human birth that really did help me. But I also extensively documented on my YouTube channel the chiropractic care that I got from my sports chiropractor, who's a friend, how I was getting great sleep. Now I'm starting to answer your question. Sleep is number one. This is what almost nobody talks about. I've heard you in a few interviews, Roger, say that you don't use an alarm clock, and I don't use an alarm clock. It's super important to get proper sleep and get as much sleep as your body will let you, with rare exceptions for some people who have sleep disorders, who will sleep 12, 14 hours and have some type of a deeper problem going on there. So I'm going to answer your question in a little bit more detail about the best things you can do for health, but I also want to give you a moment to kind of, reply there on some of the things I stated.
Yeah, I think one of the things I hate the most in my life is if I ever have to set an alarm because I have some sort of whatever like that. I hate that because it just makes me feel horrible for the whole rest of the day. And if you're feeling horrible, that's probably a sign that your body's not in the condition that it wants to be or should be in.
Did you do that this morning for your interview with Richard Hart?
No, of course not. I didn't set an alarm for that. No.
Okay.
I woke up naturally, and then I sent him a text message that, hey, I'm free for the next couple hours if you want to do that, because we've been playing tag for the last couple of days, just like you and I have been as well. So no, I didn't. I almost never set the alarm.
Thank you for clarifying that. So you just woke up early, because didn't you start there at 6 a.m. your time with Richard?
Yeah. But I woke up at 5:30 or something, but I went to bed at 10:30. So I got
cool.
In fact, I can tell you exactly, because I've been tracking for 8 years exactly how much I sleep every night. So last night I slept 7 hours and 3 minutes, which is and the other thing I noticed too, the days that I do my jiu-jitsu practice, I need more sleep. I'll sleep an extra hour and a half compared to when I don't. And yesterday I didn't have any jiu-jitsu, so I did 7 hours. So it's either 7 hours or 7 or 8.5 if I do jiu-jitsu. And it's really interesting. And I didn't realize that jiu-jitsu is an even bigger time commitment than I initially thought. Initially, I thought it was just the hour that I spend in the dojo, but no, it's the hour in the dojo plus an extra hour, hour and a half of sleep each night that I do practice. And, so it's an even bigger time commitment. But I think tracking your sleep is really interesting. And without doing that, I wouldn't know. Like if I had only slept 6 hours, later on today, I'm going to start not feeling so good and not be as sharp and not be as focused. Whereas I know I got, 7 hours, I'm going to be fine for the whole day through until the end of the day, and it's time to go back to bed. But that's a whole other subject though too. Like sleep is important, but boy, wouldn't the world be great if people didn't have to sleep at all? You'd get just so much more time to get some stuff done. And I don't know if, what sort of research or progress is being made on that front, but that sure would be nice to not need to sleep at all. And I think that's probably farther away from being a reality, but that's something I would like to have in my life.
Yeah, Roger, I've heard you kind of mention that a couple of times in some interviews I've watched. Like I've said, I don't want to be a crazy fanboy, but it's possible I've watched more interviews of you than any other person. It's possible. But I'll tell you about the sleep thing right now. I've researched it quite a bit. I'll link in the show. I'll do show notes for this, by the way, everybody. So check the show notes in the description, and I'll link in my review of Dr. Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, that I did in January of this year. He was also on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan might end up being a theme in this conversation because he's on point with a lot of science and tech. He's had on Andreas Antonopoulos a few times. And I bring him up because, Roger, I really want you to go on his show if it's possible, because I think it will help get your message out to a larger audience. But getting back to sleep, there is no way that as we are as human beings right now, we're going to be able to really hack the sleep problem. It's absolutely essential. It's 1/3 of our life approximately for a reason. Mother Nature, as Dr. Matthew Walker says, doesn't make mistakes. And Matthew Walker, so folks know, is the Google sleep scientist. He is the sleep scientist of the whole company, Google. And he's also a sleep scientist at UC Berkeley. And he wrote a book called Why We Sleep, and I highly recommend it. I also highly recommend you watch my little review of that book. And I talk about some very practical things that you can do to get better sleep. And then I have 2 interviews with 2 sleep scientists that were recently on Tom Bilyeu's show that I'll be interviewing as well too. One of them talks about your chronotype, which can really help.
And if I can, this is like $5.
Yes.
What a difference does a sleep mask make? Like, it is such an amazing difference. Like, go and spend $5 or $10 on a good sleep mask. Like, it makes such a big difference. Like, it is a huge, huge difference.
So guys, what I want to do right now is I want to point out the solutions can be that simple with everything in life. And that's one of the things that I talk about in the video. So I'm just going to reference the video again. It's Why We Sleep book review. I'll have it in the link here. I don't want to talk about sleep a whole lot unless Roger wants to talk about it more, but we can go down the rabbit hole with it deep, and you'll find that these little simple solutions, these little eggshells, these Easter eggs are laying there in reality. And if you just gather them up, you can get smarter and smarter and better and start hacking reality. But the negative news that I have to tell you is that you're not going to be able to hack reality down to like just getting 4 hours of sleep. It's the brain and our body.
I was hoping for 0 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I know, I was too, but I'm just telling you, Roger, like the further you get on the rabbit hole, the more you realize, like, so do you want to talk about it real quick? We can maybe cut it off like 5 minutes, because I don't just want to talk about sleep. I want to.
And well, the long-term solution to fixing that is let's all become cyborgs, right? So then you.
Yeah. Transhumanism.
Which sounds crazy, but it's already happening. I look at how good these phones are, and then we saw the first version of like Google Glass, and that's going to get better and better. They're going to have contact lenses, and they're going to slowly start integrating directly with our flesh and blood, and we're going to merge with the machines. I'm a giant fan of Ray Kurzweil. When I read Ray Kurzweil's book, The Age of Spiritual Machines, back in I think it came out in 1999 or 2000 or somewhere in there, it really I was already a real hardcore, free market libertarian ANCAP type person. But I read that and I thought, oh, this is an even better solution to the government meddling in the economy is let's all, through technology, make all this stuff obsolete. And then I'm really interested in asking, when we have superhuman intelligence, let's ask the superhuman intelligence, let's ask them political questions, right? what's the best way for an economy to be formed, right? What's the proper amount of government intervention in the economy? Let's ask beings that are way, way, way smarter than ourselves the answer to these hard questions that lots of humans are busy debating. And so I'm really excited towards that. And let's hurry up and build these superhuman intelligences so that they can help solve these problems for us. So
definitely, I completely agree. I have 3 of Ray Kurzweil's most latest books, minus Danielle, the book he did. But he has mentioned he does have a new book coming out soon called The Singularity is Nearer, which I'm excited to read.
yeah.
I follow him on YouTube and get some updates, but I'd like to see an actual book with real data and analysis that he's tracking. And for those that don't know, he is now a director of engineering at Google. He mainly works on voice to text and translation type of language. So when you're typing your Gmail now message and you see it finishing sentences for you, that was his team that led that. But yeah, Roger, I completely agree. One thing that got my iPhone here. One thing that Ray Kurzweil said that will probably blow people's mind, and I wanted to screen this in February of 2018 in Acapulco when you were up on stage and you were asking questions. I don't know if you remember this, or people were asking you questions, and Moore's Law came up, and the energy started to get kind of crazy because that was the Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash divide, and talking about obviously the block size limit and blah blah blah. Most people do not understand Moore's Law, and it's Gordon Moore is who it was named after. He was one of the founders of Intel, multi-billionaire, still alive today, and Moore's Law is still holding strong. But one thing that Ray Kurzweil talks about in The Singularity is Near is that Moore's Law is just, I believe, the 5th paradigm of computing, and there was other ones before that. The 4th paradigm was the shrinking of vacuum cubes, and that only shrunk so much until they couldn't physically shrink anymore. The law of physics said it couldn't shrink anymore. But after Moore's Law, which is still going strong and is even stronger in biotech, which we could talk about that. It's even stronger than in your computer and your iPhone, smartphone getting faster. It's even faster in some areas of biotech. But even after that, that's not the end of computational computer improvement. Then there's 3D proteins, shrinking. So here's what's crazy. In 1970s, when Ray Kurzweil went to MIT, it was actually late 60s. There was one computer that MIT had. It was larger than the room that I'm in, much larger. It cost about $10,000 in actual dollars back then, which we know is inflated so crazy. That's probably $80,000 or $80 million now. I think I said 10 million, right, Roger?
You said 10,000 initially, but I'm sure you meant probably 10 million. So.
I meant 10 million, so thank you. Apologize. It was $10 million in real US dollars back then, so it's probably more like $80 million, right? So think about that. $80 million for a computer, bigger than this room, follow me. Now today, this computer, right, and we landed on the moon with that technology. This computer today is literally about 1,000 times smaller, about 1,000 times faster, more powerful in computation, and it's about 1,000 times cheaper in bips per dollars. Now, people are like, yeah, whatever, nod your head. Here's what Ray Kurzweil said that's really crazy. And he's been saying this for more than decades. And his prediction is really accurate. This is why you want to listen to him, because he's been predicting these trends, these computational trends, very accurately for 3 decades now. And Roger, I can tell by the way you look, you probably know what I'm about to say because you've heard this. But I want the audience to really understand this and think about it. He says this is not going to slow down. So in another approximately 30 years from now, we'll call it 2050, this thing's going to be about 1,000 times smaller. So it's going to be about the size of your blood cell. It's going to be about 1,000 times more powerful. And it's going to be about 1,000 times cheaper still in bips per dollars. The price performance just keeps going up. So while the government is busy inflating the monetary supplies and fiat everywhere, computer in the free market is just bringing it down for everybody. So that leads you to how can you stay healthy so you can live in that world in 30 years from now. And I want to give Roger a great opportunity to reply there before we talk about health at all.
And you summed it up right. And I think another thing Ray Kurzweil is saying is that, and he has these charts about it in his books where he shows the average human life span was increasing. 100 years ago, it was increasing on average, 10 days a year or something like that. And then later it was increasing by, a month per year. And now maybe it's increasing by a couple of months per year. And at some point, we just need to get to the point where the average human life expanding is increasing by 1 year per year. and then you've kind of hit the magic number there where we can keep going indefinitely, and we have to just figure out how to do that with technology and medicine and all our science and know-how. But the trend there is clear. Right now the average human lifespan's 77 years or something like that. Not too long ago,
it's higher in Japan,
and higher in Japan.
So there you go.
That's right. So is it environment or genetics there? That's another part of the question. Maybe a little of both. But it certainly is higher in Japan. And sometimes when I go back to the U.S. and I see just how much obesity there is everywhere compared to Japan, I can say, oh, well, that's why the lifespan's probably higher in Japan. But let's make this happen. And dying with a whole bunch of money doesn't do you any good at all. There's another. I saw his jet on the tarmac at the airport in St. Kitts. And so I thought, who the heck is this with a private jet with his name on the back? So I was Googling the guy in St. Kitts, and I think it's Nygård was the last name. Who's
Peter Nygård. He's a very eccentric billionaire. He's into longevity, but he tries to just screw people out of their money. He's like this European who wears all these crazy clothes and has young models. And
I didn't know about the crazy clothes and the young models, but I found out that he was there in St. Kitts.
I'm sorry.
I found out he was there looking
Peter
for
Nygård
stuff. So
yeah, he's into it, and I think he's trying, and he wants to live longer. But like, for example, Dr. Bill Andrews here. Now is a great time to plug his. This is Bill Andrews Aging Care Capsules. I get paid nothing for this. I own nothing in it. I just totally believe in it. I believe this is the strongest telomerase activator. We'll talk about what that is on the market today. It's still weak. It's like a 14% activator of your telomerase enzyme in your somatic cells, but we'll talk more about who he is. But Bill Andrews is a very intelligent, well-respected person in longevity. And he's listed all these billionaires who's been in his office and who have like almost invested. And Peter Nygård was one of them. And because I've researched so much on longevity, I've seen him in some documentaries, but he's always just trying to basically back in people into these terrible business deals. Essentially, he's old school like that. But that's
so where I was heading with this is I believe Peter Nygård's a billionaire from Europe there, and he's pretty old. I think he's in his mid to late 70s or something like that. Dying with a bunch of money doesn't do you any good at all. So you're much better off to spend a bunch of that money to try and figure out how to live longer and help everybody else live longer too. Because if you figure out how to do it for yourself, it's going to be available for other people. And I don't know much about Peter Nygård other than I saw his jet on the tarmac at St. Kitts and thought, what is this guy doing here? And then Googled him a little bit. But don't be one of those billionaires that dies with a whole bunch of money. Start spending it on doing the research so you can live longer, and maybe you can become the world's first trillionaire if you're already a billionaire. But dying with a bunch of money doesn't do any good. Warren Buffett, I don't know. I think he's the richest or one of the richest guys in the world at the moment. I'd have to Google to see how old he is, but I'm sure he's not too young. If I were him, I know it's his money to spend how he wants. It belongs to him. But if I were in his shoes, I'd be spending it even faster on research and development for life extension technologies. So.
I believe Warren Buffett's 87 right now. I could be wrong. I'm kind of a fan of his. Just real quick about Peter Nygård. He does have the mindset that you mentioned. So that's a really positive characteristic about Peter. I think he's trying to solve his own aging, cure it, however you want to say it, reverse it. I just don't think he has the actual knowledge to do that. He's doing his best, and he's a billionaire. He has resources. But he hasn't figured out a few things that I think that I have. And I know that sounds really egotistical, but I'll share more details about that. And then regarding what you're saying in general, I completely agree. It's a huge message that I tell people. When Paul Allen died last year, one of the co-founders of Microsoft, worth about $20 billion when he died, owner of the Seattle Seahawks football team, the Portland Trailblazers. He had no wife, no kids, no judgment. I don't care, do whatever you want. But where did that money go? Did that $20 billion just disappear? Who knows what he did with that? He had a brain disorder, I believe it was cancer in the early 80s that he beat. It eventually took his life about a year ago. I think it was October of 2018. He set up $100 million fund, research fund over maybe the last 10 years of his life to try and beat that brain disease. That's not enough. You got to be throwing more at that if you're going to die. And this is a general message I want for the billionaire community out there to start thinking about. We're close. And I'll tell you one last thing, Roger. I really hate to be talking so much, but you'll like this about Warren Buffett. I follow an anti-aging doctor out of New York. His name's Peter Attia, Attia. He's going around the rounds. He has his own podcast. He's been interviewed with lots of longevity experts that I follow. And he has his own practice in New York. One of his clients has been friends with Warren Buffett for decades. And Peter Attia has said that his client, for many years, he'd see Warren Buffett about twice a year, about every 6 months. And Warren would talk about a new investment strategy he had, a new idea. And the guy would be like, great. He told Peter Attia, this is Warren Buffett's friend, told Peter Attia about 2 years ago that the last couple of times he's seen Warren Buffett, no talk of investment. All he's talking about is longevity and the sciences. So, right. It made me, when I saw
Good to hear.
But let's invest. So hopefully Warren is really looking and going to, I'm telling you, if people should get excited, because it just will take a whale. One person can change the longevity industry right now with how much money Warren Buffett has. So enough on that rant for me, but I was excited to hear that. And I'll try and link the video where I saw that if I can find it in the show notes. Okay.
Yeah. So talking on that front. So like, let's say, there's some people with some significant financial resources available to them. Where do you think the right places to start deploying that are in order to actually have an impact in this field today?
It's a great question, Roger, and let's keep in mind, let's be transparent who I am, what I am. So I'm a guy with a communications degree from the University of Kentucky. I've been researching longevity for about 14 years, as much as I can as like a hobby. Now it's kind of like more full-time. I've experimented on myself. I did the stem cells about a year ago. I'm 34 years old now. For this year, I've been interviewing and building relationships with people who I've kind of like been following on YouTube for years. And now I've like met them, interviewed them, gone to conferences. I interviewed Liz Parrish in July. Her company that she founded is called BioViva. And I've also interviewed Dr. Bill Andrews, who I mentioned. And then the last person I interviewed was Dr. Michael Fossil, PhD in bio.
That's the Harvard guy that was on Joe Rogan as well recently, right? Or
no, that is Dr. David Sinclair. I'm connected with him on LinkedIn. I'm trying to interview. He's tough right now because he has his book out. He's kind of
hot in the media right now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's hot in the media. So it might have to sizzle to get an interview with him, just to be transparent, like pecking orders of things. But Dr. Michael Fossil, he has a PhD in neurobiology from Stanford and also an MD, taught medical students about longevity science, anti-aging at Michigan State for like 30 years. What they are all working on, when I say they, I mean Dr. Michael Fossil, Bill Andrews, Liz Parrish, it's telomerase gene therapy. So I'm just going to repeat that one more time. That is the most exciting thing, I think, in longevity is telomerase gene therapy. And the reason is because most people know about telomeres nowadays. And Roger, I assume, I don't want this to be me talking too much. I'm talking way too much. Tell us what you know about telomeres and what you think about them.
So, like I said, I've been out of the loop for about 10 years focused on cryptocurrencies. But the last time I read about telomeres, basically they're described to me as on your shoelace, you have the little plastic thing at the end of the shoelace that keeps it from becoming unraveled. And they describe the telomeres as being kind of the same sort of thing to keep your DNA from having damage and becoming unraveled. And as you age, the length of that cap becomes shorter and shorter and shorter. And I guess there's different supplements and different things that you can do to prevent that cap from becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. And I think we have an example of how we have someone with shorter telomeres creating somebody with longer telomeres is about to enter the room. Is that the plan here?
Yeah, I think so, Roger. And you basically got it right, but I want to clear up a couple language there to make sure everybody understands. So my wife, she just got the signal. She's coming in with my little 3-week-old son. So this is Alton right here. He's got to hold his head. He's 3 weeks, right? He's still got his little thing on his head there. Here, you can. But haven't people wondered, like, how am I 34? My wife's 34. Our cells are aging, and this has been known for decades that you're only as old as your cells in your body are. It's the cellular, theory of aging. It's very well accepted now. We age because our cells age. But there's these things inside of us called our germ cells. They're our reproductive cells, the sperm cell and also the egg cell. And when they come together, their telomerase enzyme is turned up so much, basically 100%. So there's two things. There's telomerase and then there's telomeres. So it can get confusing, but they're two separate things. Telomerase is an enzyme. It's turned up 100% in your germ cells. So the telomeres, basically, every time the cell replicates, the telomeres get shorter. And that's called the ENS telomere replication problem. That's what it's called in science, in telomere replication problem. Because the RNA can't copy the DNA perfectly. So every time the cell replicates, telomeres get a little bit shorter. It's about 50 to 100 base pairs shorter they get on every replication. But you have about 100 million base pairs of information in your DNA, right? So it's not that much, but here's the thing. You only have 15,000 base pairs of telomeres at replication. So that's where the game started. During the 10-month gestation process, and by the way, it's not 9 months like everybody says, like Hollywood is just the power of marketing in Hollywood, right? To get people thinking 9 months, 10 months, 40 weeks is a normal gestation process. During that 40 weeks, you have about 5,000 base pairs of the telomeres you lose. So Alton was born about 10,000. Nobody lives past like 5,000 base pairs of telomeres from that shortening. Doing all the bad things, not getting enough sleep, smoking too much, drinking alcohol, all the stress things, blah, blah, blah. All the things people know are bad. That just shortens your telomeres faster. But here is the great thing. Telomerase is an enzyme that actually is a microbioprinter that prints out new telomere code. It's incredible. And that is, there's other things different between our germ cells and our somatic cells. And just so people know, I don't want to make any assumptions. The somatic cells are every other cell in our body minus our reproductive cells. The major difference is that the somatic cells do not have the telomerase enzyme turned all the way up. So we want to use a gene therapy, a telomerase gene therapy, to turn it up as much as possible in all the rest of your cells. The exciting thing is that Liz Parrish did this on September 15th, 2015. She was 45 years old at the time. She'll be 49 in January next month, 2020. I think she looks really good, but unfortunately she's like young and healthy, and she's the first person who ever did this. So now there's clinical trials that's about to start. You have to
so back up and say exactly what she did though, so myself and others can understand.
Definitely. Thank you, Roger. And again, I apologize I'm talking so much, but this is exciting stuff. And
exciting for me. Please keep going.
Yeah. So what Liz Parrish did on September 15th in 2015 is she went down to Bogota, Colombia, technically a little town right above that in South America. And she couldn't do it in the US or most countries because it's not allowed. It's not allowed by the FDA, right? So this is just ties into cryptocurrency and getting around regulators. And she got a telomerase gene therapy, and she also got a myostatin inhibitor gene therapy, which actually what it does is it promotes follistatin. What it really does is it prevents sarcopenia, bone frailty. You know how old people get really skinny and frail, lose their muscle mass?
Yeah.
It prevents that, is the gene therapy she did. That's the sarcopenia prevention one, which is called follistatin, also known as myostatin inhibitor. But the one I'm really excited about, she did a dual gene therapy. She did that one, and then she did the telomerase gene therapy. She got both of those in small doses from Dr. Bill Andrews at his company, Sierra Sciences in Reno, Nevada. And I've interviewed both these people. And then she had to then go scale it up, do what's called a scale up, because Bill Andrews just gave Liz Parrish a very little amount of this. So she had to go down to the University of Alabama, convince all these people to scale it up, make more of it. And then she had it injected into herself in multiple locations. It was filmed by a documentary filmmaker. The film's not out yet. She had to buy that from them. It's kind of a disaster in that sense, but she had blood work done before and after. And the blood work and what she actually looks like, I think, is the most exciting thing in anti-aging, because every single thing, her telomeres have gotten longer, her C-reactive proteins have improved, her insulin, glucose levels, every single thing, they did an MRI before and after. Her muscle mass has improved, which is exactly what you would want if the follistatin, gene therapy worked, because now she has more muscle mass. And it's one person, right? She says she hasn't been working out as much now than she has in the past, but it's really exciting gene therapy in general. And I'm most excited about telomerase gene therapy. Does that make sense? Is that hard to follow, or?
No, I think I followed most of it. So I guess a couple of questions there. So she did this 4 or 5 years ago now?
It was just over 4. It was September 15th, 2015. And she wants to do one more gene therapy called Clothos, which will help with her intelligence. And it also helps with liver function as well. Excuse me, kidney function.
So yeah, increasing. So I'm a big fan or very interested in nootropics and increasing people's, people like to exercise their muscles, but like, how about exercising your mind or doing things to make your mind even better? And, my hobby outside of cryptocurrency, all that's jiu-jitsu. And like, there's a fair number of people that will take steroids to be stronger and be better at jiu-jitsu. And like, unfortunately, there's some negative side effects from some of that sometimes too. Wouldn't it be great if we could figure out the right, chemicals and drugs to make people's minds stronger and better and be able to do things, and hopefully without any negative side effects of those things? And that would be really, really fantastic. And it sounds like, I'm sure people are working on it, but I've been out of the loop because I've been so busy focused on the cryptocurrency stuff. So I also heard you mention her glucose levels are better in her blood after they did the gene therapy and tested this. So I'm sure you'll know what the name of it is. So I've been reading a little bit about there's a drug for diabetes people that's been around for a long time that people can take. And I guess that also seems to help with slowing down the aging process. Or what should someone that's, just the intelligent layman that's interested in this area, and yourself as an expert who's been studying this for 14 years deeply, what should we know about that? Or what are the key points there?
So the drug that I strongly believe you're referring to is metformin. Does that ring a bell to you, Roger?
That's the one.
Yeah. I have a bunch of it in the other room. I got it when I was in Thailand, and because it's much cheaper in Bangkok. Like, basically, this shows you the whole system, how it's all screwed up, but how just by getting smarter and learning things, you can get around the system. Like, basically what you've done with your whole life, which we'll talk about, defecting from U.S. citizenship to avoid taxes and just stake your claim in your intellectual beliefs. Not just, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You didn't just do it for that.
I have to be very careful that I did not renounce my U.S. citizenship to avoid taxes. If I said that I did that, then they would never let me back in the U.S. ever again. So it was just an added benefit. So
Gotcha.
I look forward to seeing you at the next Anarchapulco as well. So.
For any government people who might be watching, I said that, not Roger. So thank you for clearing things up, Roger. No, but oh my gosh, what was I just talking about?
So just figuring out the system and working it to work for you. So buying drugs in Thailand that are cheaper there than they would be in the U.S. because they rigged the whole thing. So
right. So just so people know, like you have to have diabetes or strongly convince your doctor to get metformin in the U.S. And 30 million people in the U.S. have type 2 diabetes now, which is shocking and horrible. Actually, I think it's more than that. I think it's 30% in any event. But there was a company at Radfest that I'm promoting because they're doing kind of what you've been promoting in cryptocurrency. The co-founder of the company is a medical doctor. The other guy's about my age. His name's Anir. And they are now online allowing you to buy longevity type pharmaceutical drugs, just like metformin and a couple others, I think rapamycin, that you can get from the doctor online in all 50 states, rather than having to go in and convince your doctor that you want this. But it's still way more expensive than getting metformin in Bangkok. So we're talking about the economics of metformin a little bit, but I think you were asking more about maybe the longevity.
The health aspects, yeah.
It's shown to be very, very safe for many, many decades. Metformin, I think, has been used since like the 1940s. Fact check me on that, please, internet people, maybe 50s or 30s, a long time. And what they found from these people who were taking metformin who had type 2 diabetes is not only that they live much longer than the other cohort of people with type 2 diabetes who did not take metformin, but they also started living longer and avoiding some of the chronic diseases that normal people or people without type 2 diabetes had. So that's kind of where the longevity focus has come out of it. And then they've actually, through more studies, found out that what metformin does is it inhibits a certain pathway, a longevity pathway in your body called mTOR, mTOR. And it basically tells your body that we're fasting right now. We're not getting a whole lot of nutrients coming in, so we need to prepare for no more nutrients for the future. And long story short, it's really good. And that's why intermittent fasting is good, because as humans through evolution, you can understand there were times where we just didn't find food and we had to survive with that. And it's intuitive, right? Sometimes truth is stranger than reality. The reason why intermittent fasting is good, there's many, many reasons. Your brain starts producing more human growth hormone, or HGH. So you actually get more focused, because if you didn't have this evolutionary adaptable trait of getting more focused when you didn't find food, then you would die off and your genes wouldn't have, does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, you need to be more focused to find some food. And if you get less focused as you're hungrier, your odds of finding food would go down and you're more likely to die. So got it.
Right. But obviously there's a limit on that, and it's a little different for everybody. I don't want this whole conversation to go into intermittent fasting, because it is a rabbit hole like anything else. It's different for everybody. It has to do with personalized medicine and where you're at. Be very careful if you want to try and start doing intermittent fasting. Here's just my disclaimer. Some people do it for 21 straight days. But you would only want to do that very rarely. I'm going to interview Lauren Lockman. He is in Costa Rica. He's been doing this for decades with people. They come to his retreat center. They do like 21-day water fast where they only drink water. There's other places too. If you haven't heard of this, it sounds crazy. It works and people get good results. It's just not really mainstream. So what do you think about that?
21 days is a long time.
I know, it sounds fucking crazy, right? But it works. I've never done it. The most I've ever done is 87 hours. And honestly, I can just say when you're towards the end of that, you just feel good. Like I don't need as much food, but I was like, you know what? I should probably eat some food. And I did. But there's people that do 5-day, 10-day fasts aren't that crazy. And there's a lot of health benefits to it. It depends on how much time you have, Roger, and what you want to talk about, but we can pivot unless you want to learn or talk more about intermittent fasting right now.
Yeah, I know all of this. If I wasn't so busy with cryptocurrency, this is the sort of stuff that I'd be busy reading about, is life extension and AI.
Okay.
Because those are the two technologies that are going to improve the lives of everybody, including my own. So
yeah, let's try and stay focused on higher level though. Then I'll put links into intermittent fasting info, and I'll try and do videos on that so people can learn about that. But while we have Roger, let's try to stay focused. So telomerase gene therapy is what I'm most interested in, because what it does is we're trying to turn up telomerase in all of your cells, as many as possible. And this is a really big key too. This is something you said earlier, Roger, that I think people get confused upon because it's really complex and the way we've communicated it. So the aglets are what are the tips of the shoelaces, as you mentioned, as like the analogy with telomeres, right? And the aglets, that plastic cap on your shoelace, they do protect your telomere, or they do protect your shoelace. So people use that analogy and they think the telomeres, because they're on the tips of the chromosomes, they protect the chromosomes, but that protect isn't really the best word. What they're really doing is they're telling the chromosomes how to behave. So they kind of protect them in that way. So as they get shorter, they tell the genes to be expressed in different ways. And this gets into epigenetics, which I'm sure you're familiar with and a lot of people are, but I want people to know that epigenetics is the future of medicine. That's 21st century medicine, and genetics is 20th century. So you need the genetics.
It's just like vacuum tubes to integrated circuits, right? This is the next step.
Correct. So basically, we want to do telomerase gene therapy, extend those telomeres, and tell the genes to behave like they were younger. And that's just basically the best return on investment, is what I believe in gene therapy. It's not just me. It's what all these really smart scientists who have been reporting on believe. The best thing you can do right now is take pills like Isagenix IsaGenesis and this, and TA65, which I don't have here. They're the only real telomerase activators, but they're weak. They're like 13, 14%. That is not going to get you to be like 60 years old and then looking 40. It's going to be the telomerase gene therapy that can actually do 100%. And I think help a lot there. And we're getting closer to figuring this out for real very soon. So sorry, over there.
Are there trials going on yet? Or tell me about how close we are to that sort of thing, and where is it happening, and what can we expect, and what sort of time frame?
Yeah, great question. So as I said, Liz Parrish was the first person who did telomerase gene therapy in September 15th, 2015 in Bogota, Colombia, through the company she founded called BioViva. And they actually have to do it through a partner company. BioViva is a data collection company, but IHS, International Health Systems, is the partner company that actually does the injections in Colombia. And there's other people that did myostatin inhibitor gene therapy before Liz Parrish, about a few years before. Now IHS has done multiple telomerase gene therapy and follistatin gene therapy injections for people, but it's still only been like a few months of that. There's a separate company
You're
like,
doing this on humans now, and how
yes,
many people have had this? Or
yes, we're talking about humans, and it's only been a handful at this point. So we're very early stage in this. They're all paying money at this point out of their own pocket. So there's controversy there over like ethics and morals, but this is where voluntarism comes into play. Something that
your
Roger,
body, right?
yeah, it's very simple. Let's let Roger explain voluntarism, because you've done so great at communicating this, and I've always felt this way, but you're such an effective communicator. So the floor is yours. Please explain voluntarism to people.
Yeah, that one I can handle. So there's only three options: either you own yourself, somebody else owns you, or everybody somehow owns everybody, to some extent. And like the option of somebody else owning you, well, that's called slavery. And for most people have decided in most parts of the world that that's not a good idea, and that's not how the world should work. Everybody owning a little piece of everybody else isn't possible, right? Because at the end of the day, even if someone's pointing a gun at you and says, hey, put your hands above your head, you're the one who still, your mind controls your body. You're still the one putting your hands above your head because you chose to, even though someone was pointing the gun at you. And so at the end of the day, if you look at it just like, if I drop this, it'll fall down because the law of gravity, that's the way the universe works. Well, the way people work is each individual controls their own mind and their own body and their own lives. And so your own body belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anybody else. And so the world works better, and it's the way the world was designed to begin with, that each individual owns themselves and they should be able to deal with anybody on a voluntary basis, right? So and that's how almost everybody lives every moment of their life all the time. So McDonald's asks people to buy their hamburgers. Ford Motor Company asks people to buy their cars, right? When you ask a girl on a date, you're asking her, right? All of these things are voluntary, and people get really, really mad when people interact with each other in a non-voluntary way. So an example of an involuntary human interaction would be rape, robbery, murder, right? All very different than McDonald's offering to sell a hamburger, or Tesla offering to sell a car, or a Telomeres medicine company offering to sell some medicine. But so many people get brainwashed from a very, very young age, and they don't realize that another big giant time in which people aren't interacting on a voluntary nature with other people is government. Government's not about asking anybody to do anything. It's about forcing them against their will to do it with threats of violence. And just like we all know that a rapist is wrong, like the only difference between making love and being raped is one's voluntary and one's involuntary. The only difference between working for a living and being a slave is one's voluntary and one's involuntary. And almost everybody's interaction is voluntary all the time, except for with government. But everybody's brainwashed in the government school from a young age to not see the coercion of government as the coercion and involuntary nature that it is. And once people have that pointed out to them, I think they can see the world more clearly. And I would like more people to realize that government is simply organized force. And if forcing people to do something against their will is wrong, for the same reason rape and robbery and murder is wrong, government forcing people to participate in things is wrong for the same reasons. You can argue that maybe it leads to good results. I don't think it does, but you can't argue that taxation isn't theft. It's very clearly theft, even if it leads to good results. If it leads to schools and hospitals and bridges, like, you can make that argument, but that doesn't negate the fact that it's theft. So that's we'll make a whole philosophy video at some other point in the future, but that's part of what really has been motivating me for a long time, is I want to empower individuals to have more control over their own lives. And the state is the biggest interferer in people's lives, but if you're dead, you don't have any control of your life anymore. And so life extension is another way to give people more control over their own lives, because if you can live a lot longer, then you can have control over your own life a lot longer. And if you're not in control of your own life, well, what's the point? So let's put people in control of their own lives for a much longer period of time than they've been able to up until now.
Very well stated, Roger. And thank you so much, because hopefully somebody would have heard that for the first time and have their mind blown, because voluntarism is so important. And that simple concept, that you just basically laid out. You laid out a lot of concepts, but it all goes up to one word: voluntarism. Can really change a lot of people's lives. And so that's the crux of what's going on with this telomerase gene therapy right now, actually. And it is playing out, somewhat nicely, in the sense that we're actually having telomerase gene therapies occur on people. And the way that they're occurring is through the free market, pushing forward through all the government regulation that's not wanting to happen. primarily, kind of using some language that you use, Roger. What you have right now is the FDA in the US, the Food and Drug Administration, and they are a bunch of people who are basically not elected, and they're basically wearing costumes, and they're in a far off land, and they're strangers, but they're the ones controlling everything as far as like what medical, treatments you as a United States citizen can have in the US. And they're trying to reach out further and further all over the world, spreading with their tentacles in ways that we don't need to get into right now. But the good news is that if you want something like a telomerase gene therapy or to get stem cells injected, the best that you find from your research, you can go to other places in the world that are rarely, fairly affordable. Now, telomerase gene therapy is not right now. It's very expensive. So it needs to be done by typically older people who are wealthy. So Libella Gene Therapeutics, Roger, is one I wanted to get to. They're doing a telomerase gene therapy. They're scheduled right now to do 2 people in January, also in Colombia. But this is a separate company. They're based out of Kansas City, Missouri, but they can't do anything in the US as far as the actual treatments. They have a 90-year-old and a 79-year-old that have both reportedly been committed to pay the $1 million to get the telomerase gene therapy through this separate company. So we will see. This will be really interesting to see as the months and years play out, if this actually does reverse any aspects of their aging or just in general. If we have a person walking around 90 years old who all of a sudden looks like they're 70, and then a year later looks like they're 60, things could start getting, the floodgates would open if that happened, in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll have to be keeping an eye on that. And $1 million is incredibly expensive today. But even, for those that are old enough, like I remember when the very first, flat screen TVs came out, they were $20,000 for a flat screen TV. And then they got down to $10,000. And then they got down to $5,000. And then they got down to $1,000. And today you can buy a flat screen TV for a couple $100, and a pretty darn nice one too. It's better quality than the one that cost $20,000 not too long ago. And the same is going to happen with these medical technology treatments. The first ones are $1 million, but it's good that there's people in the world that can afford to pay the $1 million, because as more and more of those people pay the $1 million, they'll figure out how to do it cheaper and cheaper, and they'll get better and better, and more competition will come into the market. And before you know it, instead of it being $1 million, it'll be $50, and you can buy it at the convenience store around the corner. And it'll be 1,000 times cheaper and 1,000 times smaller and 1,000 times more effective. And we can do all that through, better technology. And the way to get better technology is through more economic growth. And the way to have more economic growth is to have more economic freedom. And the way to have more economic freedom is to build tools to empower individuals to say no to coercive entities out there that want to control their lives. So that's why I'm excited about cryptocurrencies, and that's why I'm excited about medical technologies to extend people's lives. And I see them all as like kind of pieces of the same big puzzle to improve people's lives across the world.
That's fantastic, Roger. And what's going on, sorry, the lights just went off on a timer, but what's going on right now in the telomerase gene therapy, like bioethics and news and mainstream media is coming in now with this Libella Gene Therapeutics recent news that came out last week is, people are exposing themselves for not understanding the voluntarism like principle and having poor ethics. They're saying like, it costs $1 million for people to do this. Like, you don't know who these people are. You don't know anything about them. All you know is they're 90 years old and 79 years old. They could be billionaires. They could be worth $100 million. You don't know if $1 million is a lot to them. What if they think that they're about to die and that they've done their research and that they think that this is important to them? Like, give them a chance to do it if they want to do it. It's just basically these bullies, in my opinion, posing as being morally superior. I'm a bioethicist. I have a PhD. It's like, well, this 90-year-old who's about to die doesn't give a damn. And, I'm trying to work on the 2 biggest problems. One of them in the world is money, how we handle our money and what it can do for freedom for people. And the other one is, things that are killing people. And I want to say the statistic real quick. A lot of people don't realize how far we've come in human progress to get to this point. About 150,000 people die every single day. And about 110,000 of those people that die every day die of aging or age-related diseases. And most people don't know this, but this is the number one thing that's killing the most people on this planet. So this is a compassionate message that I have right now. Most people throughout history did not die from aging. They weren't so lucky. They died much younger ages from horrible things like, bacterial.
Bubonic plague.
Right. Bubonic. It's just, we don't have to go down there. I think we have an intelligent enough audience to know this is exciting. We're now at this point where what's killing the most people is aging. But it's kind of a catch-22, because if you do everything right and you invest and you do things, then your like reward for being 70 years old is your body's falling apart. It wasn't supposed to be like this. So we need to create technologies that can actually keep people young and healthy. And that's what's going to get them to live a lot longer. It's youth. And I think telomerase gene therapy is the best way to do that. So I think I've made that, pretty clear. I don't know if we wanted to chat about that more, unless you had some more specific questions about it, Roger.
No, but maybe off camera, I'll tell you more about the stem cell facility that I've invested a large amount of money into, and would love to get your input as to what sort of areas they should be focusing on as far as providing these treatments to people around the world, and what areas of research they should be focused on. And because you've obviously been very, very deeply involved in this space for a long time now, and that's the type of people that we want to get input and advice from.
Definitely. I can share more details with you off camera, but I think one thing that, I want the internet to understand right now is I spend a lot of time researching stem cells. And what you find eventually is that when you find all these experts, a lot of times self-proclaimed, but a lot of times very legitimately, they're running a stem cell practice like Dr. Neil Reardon. And they have, took in Mel Gibson, a famous celebrity, took in his dad at 92, Hutton Gibson, 9 years ago, approximately. And he was about to die. The doctors at the Cleveland, Mayo Clinic told him basically, go home, pack it up, you're dead. Comes in a wheelchair. And he's still alive 9 years later after these stem cell injections at the same clinic that Roger got. Something's probably going on there, and it really is. But here's what I'll tell you. As I talked about earlier with the incentives, alignment, mesenchymal stem cells are incredible, and I love them. I got them injected in me a year ago, but I am more excited about fetal stem cells like EmCell and embryonic stem cells. And I've interviewed a company called Stemaid in Mexico. I've interviewed their medical director, Dr. Denise Arinson. What they're doing, most of mainstream science is written off as being completely crazy and causes cancer. Embryonic, pluripotent stem cells that come from a 5-day-old blastocyst. When in reality, according to Dr. Arinson, so this is where remove me is saying this, I'm the messenger, I'm kind of reporting what she says, I'm no expert, but they are injecting people with their 5-day-old blastocyst embryonic pluripotent stem cells at Stemaid in Mexico, in Cabo, Mexico. She's had it done herself a few months ago, and they say that they're getting great results. And they say that the difference is that why most people don't understand this is because they can only inject about a certain amount every day, about 20 million of them. Whereas I had 300 million mesenchymal stem cells injected in one day. Between your 100 million IV and whatever you had locally, let's just say you had a lot, they keep it to 20 million embryonic because they know any more can cause cancer. And embryonic is known to cause tumors and cancer. And they also first make sure that your immune system is really healthy, that you're an otherwise very healthy person. Because if you have a weakened immune system, then those embryonic stem cells, basically can really wreak havoc and cause cancer. But those embryonic pluripotent stem cells that Stemaid injects, they remove, your body flushes them out every day. So what's also really inconvenient is they want you to inject them every day for a week or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks straight. Whereas what you and I had, we ran in there one day, outpatient.
One and done.
One and done, right? So there's so many factors going on here, and we're so early in the stage of this in reality, but I am not just keeping a closed mind on this like many stem cell experts are, just saying just basically saying it's mesenchymal stem cells are bust. Fetal stem cells are immoral, they're bad, or embryonic are that's shown not to work. I'm keeping an open mind, and the devil's in the details here, and I think it's going to take a long time to play out, but we have this kind of happening decentralized in different countries with different laws. It's a big planet, over 200 nation states, just like what's happening in crypto. We'll see how this plays out. So I just kind of wanted to say that right now, Roger, and you and I can maybe chat about more details offline.
Yep. And if a nice backup plan, though, I think is chronic suspension, right? So if technology is only going to get better and better and better, and if you want to live forever, the backup plan there, freeze your body in a big giant vat of liquid nitrogen, and then future medical technology hopefully will be able to repair whatever the damage is caused by the freezing process, plus whatever it is that you died from in the first place. And to say that, oh, that's crazy talk, that's madness. No, think about what you're saying. Just a few decades ago, having a heart transplant would be crazy talk, right? Now it's a common medical procedure. And so to think that we're never, in 1,000 years from now, you're not going to have technology that's going to be good enough to fix the damage caused by the freezing process, I think the thinking that that's never going to be possible. That's the naive thinking. So anyhow, take a look at alcor.org. I think they're a great group, and you can pay in Bitcoin Cash over there as well.
Definitely, guys. And think about what Roger's saying there. He looked into Alcor 20 years ago. I mean, this is a person who has a proven track record of, forward thinking, thinking about technologies that are super important and then reverse engineering from there. This is what some of the greatest minds of our time think about. If you read the book 0 to 1 back there by Peter Thiel, and you think about the PayPal mafia, people like Elon Musk. I worked at LinkedIn, founded by Reid Hoffman. These people have a proven track record, and what they do is they take something that's true first, and then they just revert backwards and try and reverse engineer it. How do we make something that's true reality? So in Tesla's case, it's like, hey, we need sustainable energy. We just do. I mean, no matter what you think about oil, it's not a renewable resource in the sense that if we keep growing, we're eventually probably going to use all of it. Or use so much of it that the price goes up. We need renewable resource. So Elon Musk has just basically worked on that one truth and worked backwards. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he's basically said two things. He's betting on that he's always going to want to get something to you faster and cheaper. He's never going to have a customer at Amazon say, Jeff, I really like these socks I ordered on Amazon. I just wish they would have gotten to my house slower and been more expensive, and that's the same thing with, what Roger's doing with money, fast, cheap, reliable. And Roger, I can let you talk about exactly what all three of those things mean, because they're really not that simple. The devil's in the details. Why is Bitcoin Cash the fastest? Not the fastest, but fast enough that it's basically instant.
Certainly faster than that other version of Bitcoin. Yes.
Right. But it's just these simple truths, and you work backwards on them. So, Roger, I apologize. Continue with that, please.
Yeah. So for those that are watching this because they know of my involvement in cryptocurrency, it won't be new news to them. And those that are watching this because you're interested in life extension stuff, give cryptocurrency a try. You can buy your life extension drugs on Amazon using Bitcoin Cash at a 20% discount using Purse.io. You can go ahead and try out your first Bitcoin Cash at free.bitcoin.com. But today there are two main versions of Bitcoin. There's what everyone's calling Bitcoin in the media, and then there's Bitcoin Cash. And the part that's just was maddening to me as the very first investor in this space in the world is that the software developers that managed to take over the Bitcoin project, they openly say that they want the blocks to become full, which then causes the transactions to be slow, expensive, and unreliable. A lot of people don't know this, but the average Bitcoin transaction in the end of 2017, the average time for it to be recorded into a block was more than a week, right? A week. Imagine if Amazon's average delivery time went from being, overnight with Prime to becoming more than a week on average. People would really be looking for alternatives really, really quickly. And that happened with the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And so there's a lot of different moving pieces that are important, but I'm really excited about Bitcoin Cash's fantastic user experience with fast, cheap, reliable payments. And not just today, but always. So right now, Bitcoin's working decently well again because fewer people are using it and there's fewer transactions. But the moment a bunch more people start trying to use the thing that everybody's calling Bitcoin again, it's going to have a horrible user experience again, whereas Bitcoin Cash is ready for everybody to start using it, and it's going to continue to have a good user experience. And so anyhow, if you haven't tried any of that, head on over to bitcoin.com. That's my commercial for Bitcoin Cash today, but it really is a powerful tool to enable more economic freedom around the world. More economic freedom leads to more economic growth. More economic growth leads to a faster pace of medical science technology development, which leads to people being able to live longer, healthier, happier lives sooner than they otherwise would have. So if you love your friends and your family and being able to spend time with them, and you want to be able to spend more time with them over a longer period of number of years in the future, cryptocurrency is a great tool to help promote all of that happen. So it's really a synergistic set of principles there. So start using Bitcoin Cash or any cryptocurrency today. Don't be a tribalist. Use whatever's useful to you in your life, and if you find something more useful, go ahead and switch to that.
Definitely. And Roger, you've probably done more than any person on the planet to actually evangelize and get more users on Bitcoin and now Bitcoin Cash. Seeing videos of you, and I've never really spent time with you, but in the videos that I watch, sometimes I feel like I do. Seems like you're a guy, you're out at a bar, at a restaurant, whatever, any place you are, you're actually trying to get the merchant to adopt, to use Bitcoin and now Bitcoin Cash. And I've done it a few times. I told you I traveled a lot last year. My wife and I went to 25 countries. I was in Sofia, Bulgaria, of all places. I used Marco Coino because you were just starting to talk a lot about that on the YouTube channel on Bitcoin.com. And I think now they've integrated with Bitcoin.com. Is that right?
Yeah, so we actually acquired all of Marco Cono a few months ago, and we rebranded it, I think, to Bitcoin.com map or something like that.
Yeah.
But you can head on over to map.bitcoin.com and you can see all locations there. And we're about to roll out an additional 15,000 locations across the US where you'll be able to pay with Bitcoin Cash. So that'll be really fun, and that's coming real soon here as well.
Yeah, congratulations on that acquisition. I assume that didn't seem like just a partnership from the way you've been talking about it. But yeah, in Sofia, Bulgaria, I went to a place where they accepted Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, but they'd never done a Bitcoin Cash transaction. So I just showed the employees how to do it, and that was their first Bitcoin Cash transaction at this awesome burger joint in downtown Sofia.
Were they using BitPay, or what were they using to do the acceptance?
Yeah, luckily they were using BitPay, and luckily the guys, I just showed them how to do it. They had an iPad, so I just showed them, hey, you do accept Bitcoin Cash. I was like, is your boss here? And he wasn't. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you do. Show me how you'd use Bitcoin. They pulled it up, and then Bitcoin Cash was right there. And I explained to them what it was. They didn't care. It took like 10 seconds to explain it to them.
And most people in their lives, they're not going to care. They just want something that's useful. And if it's useful and more useful than the alternatives, then they'll use it. And if not, they're not going to worry about it. So it's our job as cryptocurrency fans to make it so incredibly useful that people just naturally want to use it because it's a better alternative to whatever they've been using previously. And it doesn't have to be just a little bit better. It has to be a lot better in order to get people to switch, because if it's just a tiny bit better, the switching cost is too high. You have to learn something new. I'm not going to do that. Life is busy, right? So it has to be a lot better than whatever people are using currently. Yeah,
definitely. Completely true. And while I was just thinking about Sofia, Bulgaria, that was also when I was there with my wife for just a few days. We were there like 3 days. That's when Paul Allen died, actually. I remember. I had this weird way of like merging memories of like when I like visually remembering where I saw something. And I just remember thinking like, it's one guy that 20 billion could have gone to longevity, telomerase gene therapy. And I literally have no idea. I've Googled it a few more times this year where that $20 billion goes. I mean, who knows if he still had it in Microsoft stock, other things, what kind of will he had. He was kind of atheist, I think. So he might not give a shit once he's gone. He might be that egotistical. I apologize to him and his family if that sounds rude. I just don't know. I'm just proselytizing. But my general point is like, let's get billionaires excited about this stuff. And I know most people watching are not billionaires, but let's start talking about it. Let's get people excited. And you have to believe first that we can actually extend health span and lifespan. So you have to learn the science first. From there, you can kind of start to get excited and evangelize it. Is that fair to say, Roger?
Yeah. So I think that's an accurate description. And I guess that's probably a good way to wrap it up. Let's get everybody excited about this. Let's get everybody involved in this. Like, these are the real problems that the real people are having that we have the real possibility of solving. Let's solve those problems sooner rather than later.
I love it. Roger, if you maybe have like just 3 more minutes, I want to say one thing real quick, which is that let's look at the cryptocurrency community, right? And let's focus on people who are not just super, short-sighted and, tunnel vision, focused on one thing. Vitalik Buterin, who you have spoken highly about and I think is very intelligent and very moral, he's donated money to the SENS Foundation, which is Aubrey de Grey's longevity. I mean, they're trying, his longevity 501c3 charity, they are trying to help everybody live longer and healthier. So, kudos to Vitalik for doing something like that. Roger's invested or, signed up for Alcor. I don't think you're an investor, right, Roger?
I'm not an investor in Alcor, but I'm an investor in some other medical life extension technologies, mainly the Stem Cell Institute that's launching in a couple months here in Antigua.
Okay, so thanks. I meant to ask that as a follow-up question. I didn't want to cut you off. So it is Antigua. It is an extension of the Stem Cell Institute of Dr. Neil Reardon, correct?
No. Initially, there was talk about it that being the case, but it wound up being separate from him and his organization.
Okay, so. Well, that's exciting, and congrats on that. I kind of didn't get to finish answering your question real quick. So I want to leave the audience with a takeaway from me real quick. And I obviously want you to get the last word, but health tips. I mentioned sleep. It's number 1. Make it the foundation of your life. It's at least 1/4 of your life if you're only getting 6 hours of sleep. But I recommend you
buy a sleep mask. These things are like, they make such a huge difference. Like if you haven't used it, you won't realize how big of a difference it makes. Like go and buy one.
Yeah, and also like you can get the room as dark as possible. Your skin cells have recognized light as well too, and they'll send a signal. Your hypothalamus, sends out a chemical, wakes you up immediately. They've done studies in sleep labs just to show you like how far down the rabbit hole this shit goes. Is they'll do a study in a sleep lab where it's completely dark, and then they'll turn on a light right behind somebody's knee, like on the back of your knee, on your leg. And immediately they can see the signal. They have the brain, scanners hooked up. They see it go to the hypothalamus, and like the brain wakes up a little bit. So temperature, 68 to 62 degrees Fahrenheit, that's optimal for sleep. I can go on and on, but watch my sleep review. I'll talk about that. Once you get enough sleep, that's the foundation. Then diet and exercise are next, but not before. If you're not getting enough sleep, as Roger was talking about earlier with your jiu-jitsu, right? You need more sleep to recover. So they say, practice makes perfect. It's actually not true. It's practice and a good night's sleep makes perfect. Because if you don't get that good night's sleep, you won't remember most of the things. The back part of your brain here, which is your hippocampus, is your memory file with all your memories from today. It won't transfer to your prefrontal cortex during REM sleep very properly if you don't. And you get most of your REM sleep in your last cycle. So if you're only getting 6 hours, sleep's not laid out equally. You get most of that REM sleep in the last sleep cycle. That's why if you get 6 hours, your body might feel good. That happens in the first 4 hours. The first couple of sleep cycles, mainly 3 and 4, non-REM stage 3 and 4. So you feel good, but your brain's like, oh, that's because that's the REM sleep, and that comes in the lumps at the end. So that's why, Roger, like, unfortunately, I don't know of any way. Maybe there'll be a way, but that's why you can't go below like 4 hours. You just, you always feel like crap mentally if you go less than 5, right?
I think if I go less than 7, I don't feel so great. So
yeah, that's true for pretty much everybody. But if you go less than 5, you're like a zombie almost.
really horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, but your body can still walk around is my point. But sorry, I'm ranting. I want to close this up. So health recommendations, sleep, then diet and exercise are after that. Then be careful what you put in your mind. This ties me into be careful who you follow. Follow Roger Ver, not Roger Ver. And that example, the reason why I bring that up, and you can't see Roger right now, he's smiling though, it shows you how early we are in this cryptocurrency space, guys. Most people don't even pronounce the man's name right. And he's done more to pioneer Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies than pretty much anybody, in my opinion. And that's not even really an opinion. It's pretty well documented. Most people don't even pronounce his name right. So think of how early we are. Like, pronounce the man's name right. So that was my point on there. Back to the health stuff to close out. Think, right? Audit your own thoughts. Be careful who you follow. Look in the show notes in the description. Follow Roger on Instagram. Watch Bitcoin.com's YouTube videos. They're always putting out great content. Roger, if you start doing your own YouTube channel, if you start uploading videos there soon, then follow that as well too. Roger, I'll have a link in the description below. It's just Roger Ver. Follow him on Twitter, almost 6,000 subscribers. Congrats to you on that. And then Roger,
600,000. Yeah.
I apologize, of course, 600,000. And then Roger, what are some other great ways that you prefer for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, and if you have an interesting idea or a product or something, you can always send me an email at roger@bitcoin.com. And if you want to see all the cool tools we're building to empower individuals in their own lives around the world, visit bitcoin.com for that, because we have all sorts of fantastic things. And download the bitcoin.com wallet. It's an amazing tool. You can send and receive any amount of money with anyone, anywhere on the planet instantly, basically for free. And there's nothing that anybody can do to stop it. That's a really powerful tool to bring more economic freedom to the world. And that's the bitcoin.com wallet. So give it a try. It's useful. I think you'll like it.
That's awesome, Roger. I want to say one final thing real quick. First of all, you've been so gracious with your time. I really appreciate it, especially after doing that live web chat or the live webinar with Richard Hart just before this. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I just want to let you know and the audience know, we just scratched the surface on longevity. This stuff is complex. I'm really excited about exosomes right now, which are secreted from mesenchymal stem cells. You can actually get those injected in the US right now by a company called Chimera Labs and Direct Biologics. There's some others. I like Chimera Labs the most. I've interviewed their CEO and founder. There's other exciting things, but they're more at the molecular level. So Roger, that's something you mentioned earlier, like molecules. I don't think we're going to solve aging by just like molecules like NMN or resveratrol. Those are good. They're helpful. but I think gene therapy is the most exciting, to actually get in there and edit the genes. We're not ready for CRISPR yet on humans. That's probably another decade before we can actually start, doing CRISPR on humans. But just doing gene therapy right now is really exciting. And I think that's the highest return on our investment, so that you don't have to keep popping a pill every day or injecting yourself all the time. Just take a gene therapy. Hopefully it lasts for life, or at least 10 years. And I just kind of had to say that, since we were talking about longevity, the high level, how I think about this stuff and where to leave the audience.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for I learned a lot today. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with me. And I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to see if this entire space progress into the future, because if you're dead, you can't participate in anything. So let's make it so we can all live longer and participate in more interesting things. So thank you so much for today, Brent.
Thank you so much, Roger, for your time. I really appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing, because it's people like you who are going to have to, invest in these therapies to bring us across the finish line and keep us living longer and healthier. So keep doing what you're doing. And again, I really appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you, Brent.
Have a great day.
You too. Thanks so much.